Florida Atlantic to its second Conference USA championship, and this is something that will get a lot of attention because of Lane Kiffin's long-standing history in the SEC in a variety of places. A brief stint as the head coach, of course, at Tennessee, and then a successful stint as the offensive coordinator in Alabama. And Nick Saban's assistants have historically had all kinds of trouble with him, but I think you think this is going to be different this time.
Yeah, remember one thing. A couple of years ago, Lane Kiffin got the FAU job, and he coached in the semifinal game, so he quits. And he still got fired by Nick Saban because he lost interest right before the final. I think it ended up costing Alabama a national championship. But Lane Kiffin is obsessed with Nick Saban, and I think Nick Saban is obsessed with him. And Greeny, I firmly believe that of all these disciples, and we've talked about them ad nauseum between Kirby Smart and Jimbo and so many others, that Lane Kiffin is going to be the first Saban disciple to beat the GOAT. I'm not saying it will happen next year, but it's going to happen because he will spend every moment. He'll lose 11 games to prepare for that one. And I think Saban's not intimidated by people, but he's going to look over there and go, I don't want to play Lane Kiffin.
He's like a gnat for Nick Saban, isn't he? And in the best, most respectful way that you can be a gnat. I mean, here's the thing about Lane. I think when you look, like a GNAT. Anyway, when you look at what he brought to the SEC, that was part of really the shift offensively in the entire league that then made all these other teams, Greeny, have to decide that they've got to do big changes with their programs. And I do think that Lane will be obsessed with Coach Saban. There's a way that Saban looks at Kiffin with respect, but he also can't stand him.
I had someone close to Nick Saban tell me once that he had to get rid of Kiffin before the national championship game because he was like your recalcitrant 16-year-old who just grabs the keys to the Ferrari and forgets to turn the garage door open and he goes right through it.
Kiffin's matured a lot, though, since then, though, I think. At FAU.
Is this a good move? I mean, people will ask this at Ole Miss because of the history involving Kiffin. You like the move?
They were 4-8 under Matt Luke. This is a brilliant move. I mean, you hate to hire a coach to win the press conference, but this is Lane's fifth head coaching job, 4 in college and 1 with Al Davis at the Oakland Raiders. I think it's a fantastic move.
It is his, and you can take this however you wish, but it is his 5th head coaching job, and he's 44 years old. So, I mean, that tells you 2 different stories at the same time. Let's leave it on that note. We'll get to some of the other stuff I wanted to. We don't have enough time to break into it. Most regular season games against a single team in the Super Bowl era.
I'm not falling for it. I'm not going to say Eli versus the Eagles, which might be stupid. I'm saying Tom Brady, who's played the Dolphins 400 times.
You did a good job of not falling for Eli. But the answer is Brett Favre. Brett Favre has 36 games against the Bears.
Laura, I told you.
You actually did.
He played for Green Bay and Minnesota in his career. Eli Manning started his 30th game
now he sells Tommy Cropper. It's great.
Yesterday. And Laura, how did Eli do against the Eagles yesterday?
Yeah, he didn't do so well. And here's the thing, Greeny. I'm going to help our buddy Dan out because he gets to talk about his best friend Carson Wentz right here once more. Let's remind you how well he was last night. Wentz sneaking it over the line for a big first down there, Dan.
And I love this throw to Arcega-Whiteside down the sideline. Just ball placement. I mean, that's the only place you could throw it. Good job by him kind of falling into this catch. And I love this ball down the seam. Put your back foot in the ground. Drive it down the seam to Goddard. Hold him up against the safety. Big time throw.
That was a gain of 28 down to the 13-yard line. Later in the drive, under 2 minutes to play here and finding his boy Zach Ertz.
And the only guy open. The only place you could throw that football with the defender barreling down on him. Big time step up throw.
That means we're going to overtime. The first play of OT wins. Finding Miles Sanders there.
Yeah, I like this play design. It was really kind of like a design screen. Those 2 receivers are blocking. Get it out to Miles Sanders in the flat. I love the play action movement for Carson Wentz, something he does really well.
A gain of 13 there to Josh Perkins. And then 2nd and goal for the Eagles here. Wentz finding Ertz once again.
Yeah, this is a play that he's brought over from North Dakota State, which he loved. It's a big red zone concept for them. They motion Ertz down, and obviously a game-winning touchdown.
Huge for the Eagles, and the win pulls Philly into a tie with the Cowboys for first place in the NFC East. Dallas, however, currently in the playoff picture, having won their first meeting this season. According to FBI, the chances to make the playoffs are Cowboys 67%, Philly 33%.
And the Eagles at this point are just a walking mash unit. And I want to quickly bring Dan Graziano into the conversation to set up what we want to talk about, because I'm sure there were a lot of people thinking what we were thinking this morning, and that is, might they try or they consider trying to sign Antonio Brown? Dan, where is the latest as far as Brown is concerned with the league?
Well, we're waiting to find out, Greeny, if the league is going to suspend Antonio Brown or not for all the issues that came up earlier this year regarding his off-field conduct, 2 women accusing him of inappropriate behavior toward them. The league investigating that has yet to rule. So because they have yet to rule on potential discipline, if a team were to sign Antonio Brown today, hypothetically, he would be put on the commissioner's exempt list until that investigation is complete and a decision on discipline was made. So that's a big reason why you haven't seen teams move to do that, because at this point they don't know how long he would theoretically be out, and they wouldn't be able to use him immediately anyway. The other reason is because, honestly, I mean, the stuff he's being accused of and being investigated for is stuff that some teams don't want to be associated with. So it's not as cut and dried as the Eagles need help, they should sign Antonio Brown. There's a lot of questions still to be answered about whether you want him on your team at all, and if you do, whether he would even be available to you, and if so, when.
Correct, of course. All that stuff is more important than any of the football piece. But as far as the NFL is concerned, it would seem to me there isn't a great urgency to complete their investigation if no one is trying to sign him. If a team like the Eagles were to inquire with the NFL, hey, we'd like to make a move here, would that hasten some sort of decision on the part of the National Football League?
Well, when you talk to people at the NFL, of course, they're going to say no, that their investigation is going to take a certain amount of time, and that's why the delay is. It's not a question of, oh, can we move this along so we know whether we can sign him or not. The league wants to get these kinds of investigations right. There are examples in the past of them not getting these kinds of investigations right, and we all know about those. But, yeah, I think at this point it's a matter of the league proceeding with, if a team is calling the NFL, and I'm sure teams are, I know for a fact teams are, if a team's calling the NFL and saying, what's the deal with Antonio Brown, when are we going to know something, the answer they're getting is when we're done with the investigation, and that's the best we can give you.
Do we know which teams?
I don't. Not to a reportable extent. No, I do not know that.
Fair enough. Didn't mean to put you on the spot. Dan, thank you. We'll come back to you as we go. Desmond, let me turn to you as the receiver sitting here at the table. And obviously, I should preface everything by saying if an NFL team doesn't want any part of Antonio Brown because of the accusations that are involved here, that is fully understandable and infinitely more important than football. But if someone were to be interested, as a wide receiver, could you come in with 3 games to play and learn an entirely new offense, get comfortable with a new court? Is it reasonable to think that Antonio Brown could show up in Philadelphia tomorrow and actually make a difference?
Absolutely. You know why? Because I believe, and Dan, you can attest to this, they will water down the playbook and make sure that he understands certain plays that he's comfortable with, things that are conceptual to what he's consistently run throughout his career. Plays that he knows that, okay, I'm good with these routes, outside routes, and then they will just tailor a game plan for AB. So I think it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's easy, right? I mean, hey, I'm really good at these 6 routes. Yeah, you go and line up there, and if it's man-to-man coverage, go win against that guy running one of those 6 routes. I would not touch AB. I've said that repetitively. Let's bring it to the Eagles, right, who obviously coming off last night have wide receiver issues.
Yeah.
I think the performance by Greg Ward and Pickens, the tight end, and Arcega-Whiteside, because they finally did it, right? I think it could be to them, to the Eagles, and to those players going, all right, they had their moment, they had their opportunity, they showed it, let's build off that rather than, they're not a Super Bowl contending football team right now, and so AB's not going to put them over the edge of being fringe Super Bowl or not.
Yeah, and you just heard Dan Graziano say teams are inquiring with the NFL, but I've said all along, to me, it would be an enormous surprise if Antonio Brown plays again in the NFL this season. Let's move on to a next topic here, and that would be Baker Mayfield and the Cleveland Browns, who continues to generate controversy this Sunday, throwing his own team's medical staff under the bus, blaming them, at least in part, for Odell Beckham's injury issues this year. This all happened following a win against the Bengals. Yesterday, his coach, Freddie Kitchens, had this to say.
He understands that we don't want him addressing other players' injuries in that manner, especially. Odell and our training staff have done a tremendous job of getting Odell to the game each and every week.
Now, Baker appeared poised to flourish in his second season with the Browns. All these weapons they bring in on offense. Instead, look at these numbers. He is dead last in touchdown to interception ratio, 16 picks, 15 touchdowns this year, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. You could make an argument based upon expectation and conversation that there was no greater disappointment in the National Football League this year than the Cleveland Browns. So let's start with this. If we do believe that Baker needs someone else to come in there and start him up again, and that the team needs a fresh voice. I'm not firing Freddie Kitchens at this moment, but it does feel likely that's going to happen. Who do you believe is the right person to come in and do that?
Lincoln Riley or Jim Harbaugh. Those are the two names that are the most relevant to me, the two names that I think have a chance. Because Lincoln Riley obviously has his history with Baker Mayfield. He understands him. I think he's been one of the guys that has been able to get Baker Mayfield to understand accountability and some maturity. And then Harbaugh, because there's some uniqueness to him. He's been in the public eye for a long time. He's got some quirkiness and understands that position and the demands of it. And he's obviously had a ton of success. Those would be the two guys that I think, like Baker, I need you to be accountable and I need you to be mature for the things that you do.
So those are two college coaches. Laura, you have any other ones?
Look, Lincoln Riley is the obvious choice because of his history there, but I would actually throw out Ryan Day, the Ohio State head coach. What he's done with Justin Fields, somebody who needed to focus on learning an offensive playbook and really has ended up, having great success this year. He's going to be a Heisman finalist. I think he could go in there, really work with Baker. And look, Baker's going to probably get where they want him to get if they're having success offensively. Ryan Day, a great offensive mind, and also somebody that I think Baker would want to play for. I'd like to see that happen.
Paul, your thoughts on Baker Mayfield? Obviously, you cover the college game first and foremost. Super high profile. Your thoughts?
I think he's flawed, and I'll blame Baker for some